Michael Steele was no stranger to the spotlight. For years, he had been a prominent figure in American politics, known for his quick thinking and ability to navigate even the most heated debates with ease. As the first African-American chairman of the Republican National Committee, he had weathered countless storms from tough election cycles to internal party conflicts. But despite all the challenges he'd faced, Steele always seemed to come out on top, calm, collected, and ready for whatever came next. Little did anyone know, however, that an upcoming live TV appearance would push him to his limits in ways no one could have predicted. The day started like any other for Steele. He woke up early, reviewed his notes, and prepared himself mentally for what he assumed would be a routine discussion about current political issues. The show's producers had promised him a balanced panel, where he'd share his insights alongside fellow commentators. It sounded straightforward enough. Steele arrived at the studio dressed sharply, exuding confidence as usual. He greeted the host warmly and took his seat behind the desk, flashing his trademark smile for the cameras. Across from him sat Karoline Leavitt, a name that was becoming increasingly familiar in conservative media circles. Though younger and less experienced than Steele, Leavitt had quickly made a name for herself with her fearless approach to journalism. She wasn't afraid to ask tough questions or dig deep into controversial topics. Her reputation for thorough research and unyielding determination preceded her, but Steele didn't seem overly concerned. After all, he'd faced tougher opponents before, or so he thought. As the countdown to airtime began, the energy in the studio shifted. The crew bustled around, adjusting lights and checking microphones. Steele chatted casually with the host, cracking jokes to lighten the mood. Leavitt, meanwhile, remained focused, scrolling through documents on her tablet. Something about her demeanor caught Steele's attention. There was a quiet intensity in her eyes, a sense of purpose that hinted she was there for more than just a casual chat. Still, Steele brushed it off, assuming it was simply part of her professional persona. What Steele didn't realize was that Leavitt had spent weeks preparing for this moment. She had uncovered information that she believed would shake things up, not just for Steele, but for everyone watching. While Steele sipped water and adjusted his tie, Leavitt double-checked her notes one last time. She knew the stakes were high. This wasn't just another interview. It was an opportunity to hold someone accountable on a national platform, and if everything went according to plan, the world would soon see why Karoline Leavitt was a force to be reckoned with. Backstage, the producer gave the signal. They were going live in 5 seconds. The red light on the camera blinked on, and the host welcomed viewers to the program. Both guests smiled politely as their introductions played. To the audience at home, it looked like any other episode, a lively debate between two strong personalities. But beneath the surface, something was brewing. Steele may have walked into the studio feeling confident, but Leavitt had come prepared to challenge him in ways he couldn't yet imagine. Unbeknownst to him, the calm before the storm was about to give way to chaos, and nothing would ever be the same again. The show began with the usual pleasantries. The host greeted the audience with a warm smile, setting the tone for what seemed like a typical episode of political discourse. Both Michael Steele and Karoline Leavitt nodded along as the host introduced them, their faces calm and composed under the bright studio lights. To anyone watching at home, it looked like just another day in the world of live television. Two seasoned commentators ready to share their perspectives on the issues of the day. Steele leaned back slightly in his chair, his body language relaxed, but alert. He exchanged a polite nod with Leavitt, perhaps trying to establish some rapport before diving into the discussion. For her part, Leavitt maintained an air of quiet focus. She didn't fidget or glance around the room. Instead, she kept her eyes fixed on the host, listening intently as he outlined the topics they would be covering. But there was something subtle about her demeanor, an almost imperceptible edge that hinted she was holding something back, waiting for the right moment to strike. As the conversation began, the host posed a series of questions designed to ease both guests into the segment. They started with lighter topics, discussing recent developments in Washington and touching on broader policy debates. Steele, ever the polished speaker, delivered his answers with clarity and confidence. His voice carried authority, and he sprinkled his responses with anecdotes and humor, drawing occasional laughs from the crew. It was clear he was in his element, engaging the audience with his trademark charm. Leavitt, meanwhile, listened carefully, occasionally interjecting with thoughtful comments. At first glance, she seemed content to let Steele take the lead, offering brief remarks that complimented rather than challenged his points. Her tone was measured, almost casual, giving no indication of the storm brewing beneath the surface. But every now and then she would glance down at her notes, her fingers tapping lightly on the edge of her folder. It was a small gesture, easy to miss if you weren't paying attention, but it suggested she was gearing up for something significant. About 10 minutes into the broadcast, the host steered the conversation toward more contentious territory. "Let's talk about accountability," he said, turning first to Steele. "There have been questions raised recently about transparency in leadership roles, especially within political organizations. What are your thoughts on that?" Steele responded smoothly, emphasizing the importance of ethical conduct and trust in public service. He spoke passionately, clearly aiming to position himself as someone who valued integrity above all else. It was then that Leavitt made her move. As Steele wrapped up his answer, she leaned forward slightly, her posture shifting from passive to assertive. "That's an interesting perspective," she said, her voice steady but tinged with curiosity. "But I wonder, how does that align with certain decisions made in the past? For instance," she paused briefly, letting the weight of her words sink in before continuing. "There's evidence suggesting that some leaders haven't always practiced what they preach." The atmosphere in the studio changed instantly. Steele's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, though he quickly recovered. He tilted his head slightly, feigning confusion. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," he replied, his tone light but cautious. Leavitt didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached for a stack of papers on the desk in front of her. Flipping through them deliberately, the silence stretched for a beat longer than expected, creating a palpable tension that even the host seemed to notice. When Leavitt finally spoke again, her voice carried a new level of intensity. "Let me clarify," she said, looking directly at Steele. "There are documents, emails, statements that raise serious questions about actions taken years ago. Actions that contradict some of the principles you've just outlined." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Steele's expression hardened slightly, though he still managed to maintain his composure, for now. To the viewers at home, the shift in dynamics was unmistakable. What had started as a friendly exchange was rapidly evolving into something far more confrontational. And while Steele may have entered the studio expecting a routine discussion, it was becoming increasingly clear that this was anything but ordinary. Leavitt wasn't here to play nice, she was here to challenge, to expose, and to demand answers. The stage was set and the tension was only beginning to build. The moment Karoline Leavitt mentioned the documents, the energy in the studio shifted dramatically. It was as if an invisible line had been crossed, and everyone could feel it, even the audience watching from home. Steele's confident demeanor began to waver slightly, though he tried his best to mask it. He adjusted his tie, leaned forward just a bit, and forced a chuckle. "Documents? What documents?" he asked, his tone light but tinged with unease. His attempt to brush off her statement only made him seem more defensive. Leavitt didn't flinch. She placed a single sheet of paper on the desk between them, tapping it lightly with her finger for emphasis. "This is one example," she said, firmly. "An email dated 5 years ago sent from your personal account. In it, you discuss details of a financial arrangement that directly contradicts statements you've made publicly since then." Her delivery was calm, almost clinical, but there was no mistaking the gravity of her words. The camera zoomed in, briefly on the document, giving viewers at home a glimpse of its contents before cutting back to the panel. Steele stared at the paper, his jaw tightening ever so slightly. For a split second he looked caught off guard, a rare sight for someone who prided himself on being unflappable. But he quickly recovered, shaking his head dismissively. "I don't know where you got this, but it's taken completely out of context," he said, his voice rising just a fraction. "You're cherry-picking information to fit some narrative, and I won't stand for it." Leavitt wasn't about to let him deflect. She leaned in further, her eyes locked onto his. "Out of context? Let me remind you what you said last year. During an interview, on this very network, by the way, you claimed you had no involvement in any financial dealings outside of official channels. Yet here we have proof that suggests otherwise." As she spoke, she pulled out another document, this time holding it up for the cameras. "Would you like me to read the exact quote?" The tension was palpable now. Even the host seemed unsure how to proceed, glancing nervously between the two guests. Steele's face flushed slightly and he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He opened his mouth to respond but hesitated, searching for the right words. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a hint of frustration. "Look, these kinds of things happen all the time in politics. People twist facts, take things out of context. It's not new. But I'm telling you, this isn't accurate." But Leavitt wasn't finished, not even close. She flipped through her stack of papers, pulling out yet another piece of evidence. "And what about this?" she asked, sliding the document across the desk toward him. "A signed agreement detailing terms that clearly involve your name. Are you saying this is forged, or do you simply not remember signing it?" Her questions came rapidly, each one hitting harder than the last. At this point, the audience could see Steele struggling to keep his composure. He grabbed the document, scanning it quickly, his brow furrowing deeper with every passing second. "This is ridiculous," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for the microphone to pick up. Then louder. "You're throwing accusations around without understanding the full picture. These are complex matters and you're oversimplifying them for ratings." Leavitt raised an eyebrow, unimpressed by his attempt to discredit her motives. "Complex matters deserve transparency," she shot back. "If everything is above board, why does it feel like you're avoiding answering the actual questions? Why are you so quick to attack instead of addressing the specifics?" By now, the conversation had spiraled far beyond the original topic. The host tried to interject, reminding both guests to stay respectful, but his words went largely ignored. The studio crew exchanged nervous glances, sensing that things were escalating faster than anyone had anticipated. Meanwhile, viewers at home were glued to their screens, riveted by the unfolding drama. For Steele, the situation was growing increasingly precarious. Every denial, every deflection, seemed to dig him deeper into a hole. And Leavitt, armed with undeniable evidence, showed no signs of backing down. The calm, composed man who had walked into the studio earlier was nowhere to be seen. Instead, there was a man visibly rattled, trying and failing to regain control of the narrative. As the segment continued, it became clear that this was no ordinary debate. This was a reckoning, one that would leave a lasting mark on both participants. And while Steele may have hoped to weather the storm, Leavitt's relentless pursuit of the truth ensured that there would be no easy escape. As the confrontation intensified, Michael Steele found himself in uncharted territory. For years, he had prided himself on his ability to stay composed under pressure. But now, with each new document Karoline Leavitt placed on the desk, his confidence began to crumble. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms tightly across his chest, a defensive posture that spoke volumes. His voice, once measured and authoritative, grew sharper and louder as he scrambled to counter her claims. "This is nonsense," Steele exclaimed, pointing at the papers spread out between them. "You're taking snippets of information and blowing them out of proportion. Do you even understand the context here?" He looked directly at Leavitt, his eyes narrowing, searching for any sign of hesitation or doubt. But she remained unfazed, her expression calm and resolute, like a prosecutor presenting an airtight case. Leavitt didn't miss a beat. "Context? Okay, let's talk about context," she said, her tone steady but pointed. She picked up one of the documents and held it up again. "This agreement spells out specific financial terms involving your name. It's dated, signed, and verified. Are you denying that this is legitimate?" Her question hung in the air, sharp and unrelenting. The audience could see Steele squirming in his seat, visibly uncomfortable under her scrutiny. He hesitated for a moment, then shook, his head dismissively. Of course, I'm denying it, or rather, I'm saying you're misinterpreting it. These things are more complicated than they appear. You can't just cherry-pick details and claim you've uncovered some big scandal. His words came out, rushed, almost desperate, as if he were trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. But Leavitt wasn't buying it. She leaned forward, her voice firm and deliberate. Complicated? Sure, maybe. But dishonesty isn't complicated, it's pretty straightforward. If everything is above board, why does it feel like you're dodging every question? Why won't you give a straight answer? Her gaze bore into him, unwavering, daring him to explain himself. Steele's frustration boiled over. Because you're not asking fair questions, he snapped, his voice rising noticeably. You're setting me up, twisting things around to make me look bad. This isn't journalism, it's a witch hunt. He gestured emphatically, his movements becoming erratic as he tried to regain control of the narrative. But the more he protested, the guiltier he seemed. The host attempted to intervene, sensing the conversation spiraling out of control. Let's try to keep this respectful, he said cautiously, glancing nervously between the two guests. But neither Steele nor Leavitt paid much attention. They were locked in a verbal battle, each determined to emerge victorious. Leavitt pressed on, undeterred by Steele's outburst. If it's such a witch hunt, then prove me wrong, she challenged. Show us evidence that refutes what's right here in front of us. Don't just accuse me of bias. Address the facts. Her confidence was unshakable, and it only served to rattle Steele further. At this point, it was clear that Steele's usual tactics weren't working. Normally, he excelled at deflecting criticism with humor or charm, but Leavitt wasn't giving him an inch. Every time he tried to pivot away from the topic, she brought him back to the heart of the matter, the documents. And the more defensive he became, the more damning his responses sounded. You want transparency? Fine, Steele shot back, throwing his hands up in exasperation. But let's be clear. This isn't about transparency. It's about scoring political points. You're using this platform to attack me because it makes good TV. His accusation carried a note of bitterness, as though he realized he was losing ground. Leavitt didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she folded her arms and looked at him squarely. If it's good TV, that's because people care about accountability. And right now, you're not holding up your end of the bargain. Her words struck a chord, not just with Steele, but with everyone watching. The tension in the studio was electric, and the audience couldn't look away. For Steele, the situation was rapidly spinning out of control. Each denial, each accusation of bias only made him seem more evasive, and as Leavitt continued to press him, exposing holes in his arguments, it became painfully obvious that he was fighting a losing battle. What had started as a routine interview had turned into something far more explosive, and there was no turning back. The tension in the studio reached a boiling point, and Michael Steele finally snapped. What had started as a defensive posture quickly escalated into an all-out meltdown, leaving everyone, both in the studio and at home, stunned. His earlier attempts to deflect Leavitt's questions with logic and charm had failed miserably, and now frustration gave way to raw emotion. This is absurd, Steele shouted, slamming his hand on the desk hard enough to make the microphones crackle. The sound echoed through the studio like a thunderclap, momentarily silencing even Karoline Leavitt. For a brief second, the room froze, but Steele wasn't done. You're twisting everything I say. This isn't journalism, it's character assassination. His voice was loud, almost frantic, as he leaned forward, his face flushed with anger. Gone was the polished commentator who could debate calmly under pressure. In his place was a man visibly unraveling, his composure shattered by Leavitt's relentless pursuit of answers. He jabbed his finger toward her, his gestures sharp and erratic. You sit there with your little papers, acting like you've uncovered some grand conspiracy, but this is garbage, pure garbage. Leavitt didn't flinch. She sat perfectly still, her expression calm but piercing, watching him unravel before the cameras. When she finally spoke, her tone was icy and deliberate. "If it's garbage, then explain it," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Stop yelling and address the facts. That's all I'm asking." But Steele couldn't, or wouldn't, engage rationally anymore. Instead, he turned his ire toward the host. "Are you going to let her keep doing this? Is this what passes for balanced discussion these days? Because if so, we have a serious problem." The host raised his hands in a placating gesture, clearly unsure how to de-escalate the situation. "Let's try to stay focused," he urged weakly, but his words fell on deaf ears. Steele ignored him, launching into a tirade that grew more unhinged by the second. "This isn't about accountability, it's about tearing people down. You come prepared with half-truths and lies, thinking you're clever, but you're not fooling anyone." He gestured wildly at the documents spread across the desk, his voice dripping with disdain. "These are nothing but distractions, a desperate attempt to make headlines." Karoline Leavitt finally broke her silence, her calm demeanor only fueling Steele's rage further. "Distractions don't hold up in black and white," she countered, holding up one of the documents again. "These aren't opinions or interpretations, they're facts, and until you acknowledge them, none of this is going away." Her measured response seemed to infuriate Steele even more. He barked out a bitter laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. "Facts? Oh, please. Facts don't exist anymore. Not when they can be twisted to fit whatever narrative you want. You should know that better than anyone." His accusation carried a venomous edge, but Leavitt refused to take the bait. Instead, she leaned back slightly, her body language relaxed yet commanding. "If narratives are all you care about, maybe you should reconsider your approach," she said coolly. "Because right now the story isn't about me. It's about you. And trust me, people are watching." The audience at home was glued to their screens, witnessing a spectacle unlike anything they'd seen before. Social media lit up in real time as viewers shared clips and memes of Steele's explosive rant. Some cheered Leavitt for standing her ground, while others criticized Steele for losing control. But no matter where they stood, everyone agreed on one thing: this moment would define both careers moving forward. As the segment dragged on, the host made one last attempt to regain order. "Let's take a quick break," he suggested, looking visibly relieved when the producer signaled to cut to commercial. The red light on the camera blinked off, but the damage was already done. Steele's meltdown had been broadcast live, unfiltered and unforgettable. In the moments after the camera stopped rolling, Steele slumped back in his chair, his face flushed and his breathing heavy. Leavitt quietly gathered her notes, her expression unreadable. The crew scrambled to prepare for the next segment, but the energy in the studio remained charged. Everyone knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary, a brutal confrontation that would ripple far beyond the confines of the show. As soon as the commercial break hit, the internet erupted. Clips of Michael Steele's meltdown began circulating within minutes, spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. Viewers couldn't get enough of the dramatic exchange. Every heated accusation, every pointed rebuttal, and every awkward moment was dissected, shared, and memed with lightning speed. Hashtags like #TasNo, Steele Meltdown, Leavitt Exposed, and live TV drama flooded Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, dominating trending lists worldwide. For Steele, the backlash was immediate and overwhelming. Critics pounced on his outburst, accusing him of losing professionalism under pressure. Late-night comedians wasted no time turning his rant into fodder for their monologues, replaying clips of his desk-slamming moment to roaring applause from studio audiences. Memes featuring exaggerated captions of Steele shouting "garbage" or pointing angrily at Leavitt went viral, with users adding humorous subtitles that mocked his unraveling demeanor. One particularly popular meme depicted Steele as a cartoon, character exploding into flames, captioned, "When you're caught in your own web." Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt emerged as the unexpected hero of the hour. Supporters praised her composure and preparation, hailing her as a fearless journalist who had taken down a seasoned political heavyweight. Clips of her calmly holding up documents while Steele lost his cool were shared millions of times, accompanied by captions like "the calm versus the chaos" and "this is how you hold someone accountable." Fans lauded her poise under fire, with many calling her performance one of the most impressive live TV moments they'd ever seen. But not everyone sided with Leavitt. Some viewers criticized her tactics, arguing that she had been overly aggressive and confrontational. A small but vocal group accused her of ambushing Steele for ratings, claiming the segment felt more like a gotcha moment than genuine journalism. These criticisms sparked heated debates online, with comment sections devolving into battlegrounds as supporters of both figures clashed over who was right and who was wrong. Despite the mixed reactions, there was no denying that the confrontation had catapulted Leavitt into the national spotlight. Her name trended alongside headlines like "Karoline Leavitt takes no prisoners" and "The journalist who broke Michael Steele." Pundits on talk shows debated whether her rise marked a new era of accountability in media, while others speculated about her future career prospects. Overnight, she became a household name, a polarizing yet undeniably influential figure in the world of political commentary. As for Steele, the fallout extended beyond social media mockery. Colleagues and former allies weighed in, some defending him as a victim of an unfair ambush, while others expressed disappointment at his inability to handle the situation gracefully. Conservative outlets buzzed with discussions about what this meant for his reputation, with some questioning whether he could recover from such a public humiliation. Calls poured into radio shows and podcasts, with listeners debating whether Steele's meltdown signaled a decline in his relevance, or if it was merely a temporary stumble. Amidst the chaos, the host of the show found himself caught in the crossfire. Viewers criticized him for allowing the segment to spiral out of control, accusing him of failing to maintain order during the explosive exchange. Others defended him, arguing that it wasn't his job to referee a verbal boxing match between two strong personalities. Regardless, the episode became one of the most talked about moments in the show's history, drawing record-breaking ratings and cementing its place in the annals of live television drama. By the end of the day, the story had transcended the original topic entirely. What started as a discussion about financial transparency and accountability had morphed into something much bigger, a cultural moment that highlighted the power of live television and the unpredictable nature of human emotion. For better or worse, both Steele and Leavitt were now at the center of a media storm, their names forever linked in a tale of confrontation, controversy, and raw, unfiltered passion. And as the dust settled, one thing was clear: neither of them would ever be the same again. In the days following the explosive live TV showdown, the fallout continued to ripple through both their personal lives and professional careers. For Michael Steele, the aftermath was a humbling experience. Once known for his unshakable confidence, he now faced tough questions about his judgment and behavior under pressure. Critics argued that his meltdown wasn't just a momentary lapse, it was evidence of deeper flaws in how he handled accountability. Supporters tried to rally behind him, framing the incident as an isolated misstep rather than a defining failure. But the damage had been done. Steele retreated from public appearances for a short while, choosing instead to regroup and reflect. Behind closed doors, he reportedly spent hours reviewing footage of the interview, dissecting every word and gesture. Friends close to him revealed that he felt blindsided by Leavitt's preparation and frustrated with himself for losing control. He knows he messed up, one insider told reporters, but he also feels like he was set up, a pawn in someone else's game. Despite these feelings, Steele eventually issued a brief apology during a podcast appearance. "I let my emotions get the better of me," he admitted. "That's not who I am or who I want to be." While Steele worked on damage control, Karoline Leavitt found herself riding a wave of newfound fame. The confrontation had catapulted her into the national spotlight, earning her praise from colleagues and fans alike. Major news outlets clamored to book her for interviews, eager to capitalize on her sudden popularity. She appeared on morning shows, late-night programs, and even landed a guest spot on a popular political talk show, where she discussed the importance of holding leaders accountable. Her calm demeanor and sharp intellect won over skeptics, solidifying her status as a rising star in journalism. Leavitt didn't shy away from addressing the controversy head-on. During one interview, she acknowledged the mixed reactions to her tactics but stood firmly by her actions. "Some people think I crossed a line, and that's fair. They're entitled to their opinion," she said. "But at the end of the day, my job is to ask hard questions and present facts. If that makes people uncomfortable, so be it." Her steadfastness only added to her credibility, earning her respect from seasoned journalists who appreciated her commitment to transparency. The impact of the incident extended beyond their individual reputations. It sparked broader conversations about accountability, media ethics, and the role of confrontational journalism in today's polarized climate. Pundits debated whether such heated exchanges were productive or merely sensationalist entertainment. Some argued that moments like this exposed truths that might otherwise remain hidden, while others worried they contributed to the growing divide between opposing viewpoints. Regardless of where people stood, everyone agreed that the face-off between Steele and Leavitt had reignited discussions about trust, integrity, and the responsibilities of those in the public eye. As time passed, both figures began to adapt to their new realities. Steele slowly returned to the circuit, appearing on panels and writing opinion pieces aimed at rebuilding his image. He focused on topics outside the scope of the scandal, using his platform to discuss policy issues he cared deeply about. Though some audiences greeted him with skepticism, others welcomed his return, appreciating his willingness to move forward despite the setback. For Leavitt, the momentum only grew stronger. Offers poured in, from book deals to speaking engagements, and whispers circulated about her potential to host her own show someday. Yet, she remained grounded, emphasizing that her goal was never fame, but truth. "This isn't about me," she often reminded interviewers. "It's about shining a light on things that matter. If I can do that, then I've done my job." Though their paths may never cross again professionally, the legacy of their clash lingered. It served as a reminder of the power dynamics at play in media and politics, and of the unpredictable ways in which one moment could alter the course of two lives forever. The explosive confrontation between Michael Steele and Karoline Leavitt became more than just a viral moment. It turned into a case study on the unpredictable nature of live television, the importance of accountability, and the fine line between confidence and hubris. For viewers, it was a stark reminder that no matter how polished or experienced someone might appear, everyone has vulnerabilities that can be exposed under the right circumstances. And for both Steele and Leavitt, the incident left lasting lessons that would shape their careers moving forward. For Michael Steele, the meltdown served as a humbling yet valuable wake-up call. It highlighted the dangers of complacency in public life, where even the smallest misstep can be magnified on a national stage. Steele later reflected privately that he had underestimated Leavitt's preparation and overestimated his ability to deflect difficult questions. "I thought I could handle anything," he reportedly told friends. "But this taught me that you're never truly ready until you've faced your toughest critic, and sometimes they come when you least expect them." The experience forced him to reevaluate not only his approach to media appearances, but also his willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about himself. Publicly, Steele began adopting a more introspective tone in his commentary. He started speaking candidly about the pressures of being in the spotlight and the importance of humility, even when facing criticism. In interviews, he admitted that while he regretted losing his composure, he didn't regret defending his integrity. "Accountability goes both ways," he emphasized. "Yes, leaders should answer tough questions, but those asking the questions must do so fairly and responsibly." His newfound candor resonated with some audiences, allowing him to rebuild trust gradually. On the other hand, Karoline Leavitt's rise to prominence reinforced the power of preparation and perseverance. Her handling of the situation demonstrated that success often comes not from avoiding conflict, but from confronting it head-on. By staying calm and focused despite Steele's outburst, she proved that poise and professionalism can cut through chaos. Leavitt's performance inspired aspiring journalists everywhere, showing them that asking hard questions, even at the risk of backlash, is an essential part of holding people accountable. However, the incident also brought challenges for Leavitt. As her profile grew, so did scrutiny of her work. Critics accused her of seeking controversy for clicks, arguing that her methods prioritized drama over substance. To counter these claims, she doubled down on transparency, sharing detailed breakdowns of her research process and encouraging others in the field to prioritize accuracy above all else. "Journalism isn't about making headlines, it's about uncovering truth," she said during a keynote speech. "If we lose sight of that, we lose everything." Beyond their individual journeys, the clash underscored broader societal themes. It sparked conversations about the role of media in modern politics, raising questions about whether confrontational journalism alienates audiences or empowers them. Some argued that moments like this were necessary to expose wrongdoing, while others worried they contributed to polarization. Yet regardless of opinion, one thing was clear. The exchange between Steele and Leavitt tapped into something deeper, a collective desire for honesty and authenticity in public discourse. In the end, the story of their encounter became a lesson in resilience and adaptation. For Steele, it was a reminder to embrace vulnerability and learn from mistakes. For Leavitt, it was validation that courage and determination could lead to meaningful impact. Together, they illustrated the complexities of human interaction, the messy, unpredictable, and sometimes painful process of seeking truth in a world full of competing narratives. As time went on, the dust settled, and both figures moved forward. The memory of that fiery day lingered, not as a source of shame or triumph, but as a testament to the enduring power of dialogue. Whether viewed as a cautionary tale or an inspiring victory, it stood as proof that every voice matters, every action has consequences, and every moment carries the potential to change lives forever.